Come on, Livingston. We gotta go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We gotta go on and on and on. Come on, Livingston.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across, it's turned in! It's Pittman who's got it! Livingston leads!
Can they get the ball back in? O'Brien.
Lead! And Livingston have the lead!
Man, can score.
If we march together.
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates! And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
Come on, Livingston.
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Come on, Livingston. We gotta go.
Hello and welcome back to Talk Livi, the podcast dedicated to everything Livingston Football Club and Scottish football, proudly sponsored by Stjarna Apparel. My name is Angus and today I'm joined by Euan. Euan, how are you doing?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Main reason for that is because I wasn't at the game on Saturday, so that probably made my weekend slightly better. Actually, not being at the game, but it's also the first competitive game I've missed since April 2018. So it was quite a struggle to be pulled away. But when I saw after 8 minutes we were a goal down, I thought probably not the worst thing that I wasn't there. But we'll still obviously talk about that. But had a very good weekend. Spent most of it with my girlfriend, so she got me on a Saturday afternoon for a change, which doesn't happen very often. So she was quite pleased. So what about yourself, mate? How was your weekend?
Yeah, not too bad. On our pals. 21st kind of celebrations on the Friday. Saturday kind of, obviously brought the feelings down a little bit because of that performance again. But obviously we'll dive right into that. But obviously we've got some women's stuff to talk about as well. Some, maybe some mixed kind of stuff from that as well, to be honest. But as always, you can find this episode as well as all of our others on your preferred podcast streaming site. Just search for Talk Livi and follow us or subscribe to ensure you don't miss another episode.
We'll kick things off by discussing our horror show at Fir Park, as the Lions suffered another bruising first half showing, and it would end up in a 3-0 defeat at Motherwell.
Our women's team were in action midweek and at the weekend with mixed results. We'll discuss the talking points from their games against Dryburgh and Inverness.
And finally, we'll look ahead to our must-win encounter with St Johnstone in West Lothian, as the Lions look to salvage their top 6 bid.
The Lions made the short trip to Fir Park to take on Motherwell. It proved to be another horror show on the road as a lacklustre performance had the Lions trailing 3-0 at half-time again. Luckily, the game would finish that way. We could have been on a hide into, probably a lot more. Euan, extremely disappointing again, isn't it?
Yeah, extremely disappointing. I couldn't quite believe that when I was kind of checking in on the score and the Twitter updates and things like that we were 3 down again at half-time, and appears to be that we barely laid a glove on Motherwell. We sat in a bit of fear for this game, Angus, when we were talking about it on the podcast, just given our history at Fir Park. It'll now be 21 years since we last went there and won a game of football, so that run is sadly extended for another season. But yeah, to kind of talk about the major talking points, when I saw the team announced, as I say, I was keeping an eye on it from afar, but having been a big talking point, the change in shape to a 3-5-2 last week at St Mirren, Davy stuck by it this week. What was your initial thoughts on that?
Not great. Yeah. Wait, so what was the back line would have been? It was what? Penrice, DeLucas, Fitzwater, Devlin, and it was Stephen Bradley at right wing back?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, so back three of Devlin, Fitzwater and DeLucas, and the wing backs were Penners and Stephen Bradley on the right hand side.
I think looking at that team, you were hoping that maybe we're going back to the 4-3-3 kind of thing, where put Newbley back out in the left wing where he's been better, give Bradley, the better chance to play, back in, forward line as well. I think that's kind of like maybe the most disappointing thing is, looking at it, you've kind of stuck with it after it went so terribly wrong. I don't know if maybe the thinking behind it is like, look, we're struggling defensively right now. We need to get the bodies in there, but it clearly doesn't seem to be helping us too much at all. I'm assuming that that's what they've probably been working on during the week, if that's what they've been planning to do at the weekend. But I don't know. It just, again, it's us going to Motherwell and going to shut up shop, and we've barely lasted 10 minutes again at doing it. So who knows? Maybe we've got to start looking at the other way. I think we maybe touched on that a little bit. We've maybe got to go the other way. Maybe attacking teams is going to be a wee bit better. Kind of get further up the pitch and not relying on a shaky back line at the moment. In all honesty, but yeah, what are your thoughts on that, Shape?
It gave me a sense of impending doom straight away when I saw the lineup, and I'm not meaning to be over dramatic there, but definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And it appeared that way with the starting lineup and the shape. Granted, you're maybe a bit more attack minded with Stephen Bradley on one side, a natural wide player playing at right wing back, but
he's not a right wing back though either, eh?
He's not a right wing back. You're right in what you're saying, but I meant more in terms of attack minded in that area. But yeah, for me, it just screamed that we're not focusing on us. It felt like it. It felt like we're so enamoured by what the opposition do for the second week in a row, and we're almost taking ourselves out our comfort zone now. Listening to Davies' comments after the game, I think he took a great deal of the blame in the last couple of weeks in terms of the change of shape, and that he got it wrong, which, credit to him for taking that on the chin and noticing that. But I felt he shouldn't have had to try it a second week in a row to discover that he'd got it wrong, personally. I think we should have reverted back to what we've done for the vast majority of the last 2 seasons, which is playing our shape, a 4-3-3 or a 4-3-2-1. However that might shape up in terms of the personnel that are on the pitch. But I felt we had to try and focus on ourselves, and I felt we went into that game already focusing on what Motherwell do. And as you say, it's not worked, because 10 minutes in, we're a goal down. Could have been a goal down even earlier than the 8th minute at Max Johnstone. This, again, going off the highlights that I've seen, Max Johnstone had an effort, pretty tame effort, which Shamal George has saved, and then the goal from Kevin Van Veen, we've given the ball away in the middle of the park. It's allowed Motherwell to break on us. I think Van Veen gets across to Lucas a wee bit too easy with his initial first touch, albeit from a Motherwell perspective, a very good counter-attack and a very good goal. And we had very little, from what it seems in terms of highlights, and certainly looking at the match stats, in terms of anything clear-cut. And then Van Veen's got his second goal of the game. It's just a line ball. You probably heard that shout playing football growing up, line ball, when from your ball goes to your fullback, and it was essentially that. And Fitzwater's in a bit of no man's land, really, and Van Veen's peeled off the back. And personally think Shamal George has to do better with the effort in at his front post. Should be saving that. And then they've got the third goal right, I think, pretty much straight after the kickoff after the second goal. Initial ball over the top, Blair Spittles ran off Omiyonga. Omiyonga's not tracked the run. The ball's broke out to Max Johnstone, who's fired it into an empty net. The goal was eventually given after a VAR check, and it was clearly onside in the end. And once again, you're in that frame of mind as you were at St Mirren last week, which is it's a lot easier to play when you're down to 10 men. And again, looking at the highlights, it looked like we created a couple more opportunities. James Penrith had one which he put just past the post. Newbley had one which he should probably actually square for Bruce Anderson. But I mean, Motherwell could have made it even more. Callum Slattery had an effort which Shamal George has saved, and McGinn also hit the post as well. And Van Veen had one which was disallowed for offside, and rightly so. He was at least a yard and a half offside. But yeah, it just screamed once again that, as I say, that kind of insanity of going with the same system again the following week. And listening to Davies' comments, I totally get the thinking. I don't think we've been as solid after our decent run of form in January. We've been conceding a lot more goals. and we've experienced probably more heavy defeats than I ever remember us having in the top flight. In fact, I actually looked at the statistics for that. 8 times we've conceded 3 or more goals in a game this season. Compare that to last season, it was 4 for the entirety of the campaign. So we've still got 7 games to go in that regard, and we've already conceded 50 goals this season compared to 46 for the entirety of last season. And again, that's still with 7 games to go. So I can understand Davy's thought process and maybe trying to make us a little bit more solid. But at the same time, I felt we've almost played into the opposition's hands by trying to do that. And we've sacrificed a lot of what we can do to hurt teams in the process of doing that. But it's a terrible day at the office. The saving grace is Dundee United picking up 3 points against Hibs, because somehow we're still in this mix for the top 6. We're only a point behind Hibs with 2 games to play. They've got the Edinburgh Derby at the weekend coming. Their record in the Derby is horrific. I think it's actually the worst Derby record in world football that Hibs have. So it's a game, and obviously Hearts having a change of manager going into it as well. So we are still well within the mix. But God, do we need to pick up the level of performances, because it's frightening. I was thinking this earlier on before coming on to record, Angus. I felt quite positive going into the international break off the back of 2 good performances against Dundee United and Ross County, and I felt like we turned a little bit of a corner from that kind of slumping form in February, and we've come back, and it's been disastrous, to be honest, these last couple of weeks. And I'm sure the players and the management are probably just as down as we are, as fans are, about it. And I'm sure they'll be doing everything in their power to try and rectify that for the game against St Johnstone. But yeah, it was, not going to lie, the first game, as I say, I've missed since April 2018, competitive game I've missed. I'm quite glad I did.
Yeah, there's not really much more to say. I want to kind of touch on that third goal a little bit. I think that may be one of the lowest points of the season for us, how badly we were opened up there. Talking about potentially like a back 5 in there. Midfielders supposed to be tracking back, and we had that open a space for 2 Motherwell players to run through. Absolutely scandalous. And I think like one of the interesting things of it as well is, keep on going a bit like defensive side in that as well. We're the 3rd lowest goal scorers in the league this season as well, which isn't great. And I think this is the point that a lot of people are going to be coming to. Why is our star striker on the bench in these games as well? Really confused me. Obviously, we don't know what's going on, behind the scenes. We don't know if, Anderson still maybe he's had a couple of injuries this season. Maybe that's something that's, been playing, I think, an issue. But if we're in this terrible run of form, to me, it seems quite odd that that's not one of the things that we've kind of resorted to trying out a wee bit more. We know the talent that Anderson has. We know that he's got the predatory instincts that absolutely nobody else in the team has. For me, that's a bit confusing that that's not something that we're utilising a wee bit more. I think most people will say that they'd have Anderson in their start 11, so it'll be really interesting to see what happens this weekend in terms of that, because if he's not fully fit, then you've surely got to at least start him to get an hour out of him maximum. Like if that's the case, well, that's something that so we're going to have to go and talk about for the St Johnstone one. But yeah, it's really, really weird, Euan. It kind of reminds me of when Davey first took over, and obviously went on that big mad unbeaten run, and then we had that wee slump right before before the split happened, and I think we get beat 3-1 off of Motherwell, we get beat 3-0 off of Dundee United as well, and it's just like something kind of happened, and it was just really, really odd. Just like in that instance, though, we've still got a chance of making it into the top 6 with a great home game coming up this weekend. So, who knows what can happen? It's wild when football can be. But obviously, one of the things people are talking about the top 6, Davey was obviously quick to rubbish that there. What do you make of those comments about saying that you don't want to think about it? It's been a burden for us. Obviously, now that there's still a chance, is it still going to be a burden on the team? Should we expect much of a bounce back because there is this pressure that's still going to be on them? Or, what do we do? We're not to care about the top 6, but still in the hands, right?
Yeah, just to give any of our listeners a bit of context as to what you're talking about there, Angus, it was a quote from his post-match at Fir Park at the weekend, and he was asked about the chase for top 6 in Europe. Is that out of our hands now, or Are we out the race? And Davy replied, I don't even want to talk about sixth place. I couldn't care. As a group, we had a primary objective to stay in the Premiership, and trying to get this top six has had an adverse effect on the group. I genuinely believe that. Now, anyone who listens to this podcast knows what I preach season on season, and various other podcasts and things like that I've done. And I know there'll be fans out there that will think I'm incredibly negative when I say that, but the reality for me is 10th place and above is a successful season at this football club in the top flight. And I will preach that until the day is such we have crowds regularly coming in the home end, 4,000 or 5,000. The reality is we don't have the same finances to compete, and we are punching well above our weight. Had you offered me at this stage of the season 7th place before a ball was kicked, I would have taken that. Hands down, I would have taken that. But obviously, seeing how the season has panned out is probably what's creating the frustration with fans. It's actually mirroring quite a bit of last season. We put ourselves in a really good position to be in that mix for the top six last year. I think come March time, we had ourselves in fourth at one point, and then we probably had that dip of form right before the league split last year, which ended up costing us on the match day 33, as it would be against Motherwell when they scored that late equaliser. So it's mirroring last season quite a lot. And I said this last week, I don't want this season to fizzle out as a season where you go, what could have been of that campaign? And I think Davy's trying to take the pressure off the players personally going into these last couple of games. I think it's management of the players trying to take that pressure off, go out and play with a little bit more freedom these last two games. And if you make it into the top six, then it's an unbelievable achievement. But I think he is trying to take that pressure off. I saw comments online about Davy not going straight into the dressing room to speak to the players at the weekend. He spent a few minutes in the dugout with the coaching staff. I think that's quite a common thing you see in football now, where managers, coaches allow players to go and air their concerns in the dressing room before the management go in. And it also gives them a little bit of prep time to go in and discuss what he's wanting to talk about with the players. But the comments for me, I think it is Davy trying to take a bit of pressure off the players. But at the same time, the players have put themselves in a position. They've spoke about it in the media themselves. The manager spoke about it in the media themselves about trying to get into the top six and try to compete for European football. So it is a pressure that they need to take on, unfortunately, as well, at the same time. And they've obviously not, at this moment in time, don't appear to be responding to that pressure that they have themselves have probably set themselves to a degree. But bigger picture, if we stay up this season, it's a successful campaign. But trust me, I would love the team to qualify for Europe. I'd love the team to be in the top six and pushing the European places. I can't dream of anything more for the team. I'm not trying to be negative, but the reality is, I think what Davy's trying to do there is he's just trying to take pressure off the players going into two really big games.
It's an intriguing scenario, because it's like, on one hand, you're absolutely spot on with that, the 10th place and above, the budget and all of that. It's spot on. You can't really argue with it. On the other hand, though, we know exactly what this team is capable of, and the performances just haven't been there simply the past couple of months. And it's not as if, we've been unlucky. Maybe one game, the Dundee United game that we drew, probably unlucky to not get all 3 points there. The performance deserved it. The rest of them, though, you're looking at, 3-0 Inverness, you're looking at 3-0 St Mirren, you're looking at 3-0 Motherwell, blah, blah, blah. You're not looking at many of those games and saying, we didn't deserve to lose by, not only just lose, but losing convincingly. And what we're doing right now, we're getting deservedly beaten for. And I think that's obviously where the frustration comes from, because we know exactly how good they were. They have been, how we've competed with teams. Go back to, we've beat Hibs this season, we've beat Aberdeen, we've not lost to Hearts. We went to Ibrox and got a point. Those performances, whenever we get those kind of highs, they stick with you. And obviously, because the squad's not changed that this season really for the most part. It's weird to kind of go into it now, and it's like, oh, we're playing St Johnstone this weekend. Now we're feeling like, going back a step as compared to 3 months ago. So I think it's a weird one to kind of have that balancing act of being like, right, we are here, but it's also, this isn't good enough as well, but this achievement is good as well. It's a strange one, because obviously we all obviously see in like the Livingston circles, people keep on lambasting it when people be like, oh, like, remember where we were, blah, 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 go, like, lowest budget. But they are points. They are valid points. That can be true, and us underperforming at the same time can be true.
Yeah.
If you understand. It's, yeah, sure, we're punching above our weight to be, going for the top 6 at this moment. However, we have quality players. The players are good enough. Newbley's a great player. Anderson's a great player. Omiyonga, Holt, Pittman, all great players. Fitzwater in his day as well. Tremendous, like, great centre back for the last 2-3 years as well. Devlin, how brilliant he's been for us. We have a really good squad here, and I think that's the kind of issue that we're kind of getting with. But hopefully, yeah, as you say, with Davey kind of talking about, taking the pressure off, hopefully these kind of players can, kind of get back into doing what they do so well, and what we've seen them do so well, because they're capable of much more at this moment. Maybe, it's just going to take time for a little bit of a kick up the arse to come in, but, hopefully that happens this Saturday, and, hopefully we'll have a better crowd this weekend with the ticket giveaway, to kind of cheer them on as well. And, well, that's the main thing we've got to do, is just, support the team until then. But much more is needed. It's not over yet. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Angus. It can be a frustrating thing. I can absolutely understand that, but you also need to, I think they're both valid points to have. Yeah, they're both valid points to have. And use a golf analogy, there's no pictures on a scorecard. And
I have no idea.
You clearly didn't watch the Masters at the weekend, but there's no pictures on a scorecard. And had you said that the league, if you drew up the league table and had us sitting 7th, just now a point behind top 6 with 2 games to play at this stage in the season, would the fans be happy without seeing the results or the pattern of results? I feel like they would be quite content. And again, maybe had these defeats that we've experienced in the last couple of months been spread out over the season rather than this kind of block of the last couple of months, again, it might have not had the same effect on the fan base in terms of being as critical. I'll try and finish this segment on a positive, Angus. So on Friday, we've been speaking a little bit about potential captaincy candidates. We did mention if he was to stick around at the club, Jason Holt would be pretty much a shoe-in for it. And Holt has signed a new 2-year deal. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, very happy to see that. Obviously, a lot of uncertainty at this time of the season. I think, especially looking within that midfield, it was Holt, Omiyonga, Shinnie's contracts coming to an end there. And losing all 3 of them would maybe be quite big, because, on any given day, that could very much be our centre midfield kind of trio. So very good to have him on board. Very energetic player, one of the leaders, I would say, as well, kind of help set the standards. But yeah, very good to see that. And yeah, I think for a shoe-in for the captaincy, unless somebody else comes in who, kind of like in a Marvin Bartley kind of way, can, bring a wealth of experience, as maybe some of those other kind of qualities. But yeah, for me right now, absolutely delighted to have Holt for an extra, 2 years. And yeah, hopefully another couple of good years as well, because he's had a very good career so far at the club, over 100 appearances so far, played in the cup final, played in the top 6 finish as well. So yeah, a good professional who we like to have at the club, and one that hopefully maybe even sticks around after that as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think Jason's been a tremendous signing, and I remember when we signed him, for me, he was the type of player that just reeked of being a Livingston type player. A hard worker, grafter in the middle of the park. Despite his size, he can put himself about at times. And certainly looking at Jason last year, we raved about Jason Holt's performances on this podcast. Last year, he was, for me, hands down our player of the year last season. He's wealth of experience. He's played at a good level throughout his career. He's played at some big clubs in the likes of Rangers and Hearts and Sheffield United when he went down south as well. So wealth of experience, and I'm delighted he's signed on for another couple of years, and he's definitely one of the candidates for the captaincy. But yeah, just wanted to try and finish that segment on some form of positive, because let's be honest, the game wasn't anything to talk about for our point of view. We're delighted to have Strana Apparel as sponsors of Talk Livi. UK based with a Swedish soul, we are Strana. Strana is an independent fashion brand from Scotland who create high quality and stylish attire for on and off the terraces. Inspired by terrace culture, lifestyle and music, all their clothing is designed using quality materials and workmanship to combine the very best style and fit. And all of this means you get a premium quality fashion at affordable prices while enjoying a simple and secure service.
As a bonus for Talk Livi listeners, you can get 10% off your order using the code TalkLivi at the checkout. We'll also have some exclusive giveaways during the season, so keep your eyes peeled on our socials for those too. And thanks to Sterner for sponsoring Talk Livi.
Our women's side were in action midweek as they took on Dryburgh Athletic. It would result in a 2-0 defeat as the Lionesses suffered their first home league defeat of the campaign. Angus, what did you make of the game? Both of us were able to take this one in. It was a strange game because I thought the girls played pretty well for large spells, but we spoke about it when we were previewing it. Dryburgh very good in transitions and on the counter-attack, and they punished the girls, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the thing that we'd highlighted very much so from that last time that they played Dryburgh, that, you know, they have very, very kind of athletic forwards who can, you know, run in behind. I think we were keeping the ball reasonably well. I think we were keeping it in maybe the wrong areas though. It was always, you know, within our half or, you know, not really penetrating into their final third. So I think, like, you know, kind of passing the ball and spreading out a bit, and that's fine. However, when it breaks down against a team like Dryburgh who have that threat, the lassie who was on loan from Dundee United up front is a great little player, and we found it quite a lot in those transitions that were ending up, you know, 3v3 at the back, or, you know, even 3v4, leading to the likes of Jess and Fee and Tash having to, you know, kind of bail us out with kind of like big challenges in the end. Otherwise, you know, something would happen. And I think, again, you know, it's one of the things that we talked about, Euan, was the lack of, well, what I've been talking about in the last kind of couple of weeks is not really creating too many chances in open play themselves. And I think that was kind of the biggest issue there. You know, as you said, keeping the ball, but, you know, not really doing enough with it wasn't, you know, kind of ideal. Especially, I don't know if we then started to realise as well that being a wee bit more cautious, because if we give the ball away, you know, at Dryburgh, we're going to, you know, spring an attack on us. And until that, like, things were kind of going reasonably well, but I think you could always sense that, you know, we're going to be under that bit of pressure from Dryburgh. Took until the second half for them to get them, and, you know, they kind of scored kind of two identical goals where the ball kind of went down the right hand side. Right winger played really, really well as well, really good pace. I think it was, what was it, two cutbacks essentially, or, you know, one that she ran to like the byline, and, you know, two cutbacks essentially. The first one's an absolutely tremendous finish from, I think it's like the number 8 as well, and then the second one's all completely from that right winger who just, you know, uses her pace, gets to the byline ahead of like two of our defenders and cuts back to make it 2-0. And because of that, Euan, I don't think we can really have too many complaints. I can say, obviously, you know, keeping the ball well in that, but again, if you're not really creating anything with it, it's one of those ones that sometimes you see teams, you know, some of your bigger teams kind of lambasting them when they're like, oh, like, this is, like, look at the stats, like the possession and all of that. Like, that's all good and fine as long as you kind of do something with it. But here again, it seems as if we're relying too much on, you know, hoping that we get a set piece that somebody can do, produce a bit of magic for, or one of our, you know, like Jess or Shannon can get like a header from. And yeah, I think that was maybe the most disappointing aspect of it. But I do think that Dryburgh are, like, I think it's weird looking at the league table and seeing them kind of further down the league, because I actually continue to be impressed by them the most every time I go and see them, just from that attack in front. But yeah, not the best of days from us, I'll say that for sure.
Yeah, certainly from what I've seen of the girls. Obviously, you've been a bit more regular than I have this season, covering them in Callum Carson's place on a Sunday, certainly at home. And I was quite pleased watching them in the first half in terms of how they kept the ball, and they didn't resort to just going long and direct. I think they tried to play through the thirds, and they had a lot of sustained possession. The odd time there was maybe a slack pass here and there, and that's where you saw Dryburgh's threat coming in, where they were able to try and counter. I do think there was a few opportunities for the girls in the first half. Ashley Elizabeth had an effort which was blocked. Jen Dodds had an effort as well, which is just put wide. Beth Mackay also had a header at the back post, which the keepers managed to parry away. But And then Dryburgh had a pretty long range effort right at the tail end of the half, which cracked the crossbar. But as you say, in terms of the second half, the first goal comes, the right winger who set up both goals had a very good game on the right hand side, cut the ball back. It was a tidy finish into the far bottom corner. And I thought second half, again, I'll give the girls credit for maybe not resorting to going as direct. I think they still tried to play through the thirds. But, Dryburgh were very effective on the counter-attack, to give them a lot of credit in that second half. I do also think the substitutions that were made at 1-0 probably upset the balance of the team a little bit as well. I would have been more than happy to kind of stick with who was on the pitch at that moment in time in terms of chasing the game. But yeah, Dryburgh got that second goal, as you say, a great turn of pace. I think the right winger got in behind Raywin Murphy, who had been slotted into the back three at this point. And as you say, is cut it back to the edge of the 6-yard box for an easy tap in. But it was, I thought, a performance which probably merited a little bit more. I thought the girls, as I say, in possession, it was probably the best I've seen them for a wee while. But as I say, just a couple of times where they did give the ball away, they were punished quite severely in the game. And as you mentioned, that was the game in hand to potentially stretch their lead going into the split games. And unfortunately, the gap's been cut to 8 points, but it's still a good gap to have. The girls are in prime position in terms of going to close out the league. But they had an opportunity to bounce back really quickly at the weekend there against Inverness, a team which have been very competitive whenever they've played each other this season. I think Inverness knocked the girls out the Scottish Cup up in Inverness, and fairly recently drew 2 each up there as well. So the games have always been very close, but you were able to take in this one, Angus. What were your thoughts on the performance? And you also mentioned a wee bit of a change in shape as well.
Yeah, I was only able to make the first half because I was working a bit earlier than usual, but massive improvement, I would say. And I think a lot of that does come down to the change in shape there. As I was saying there, we'd really, really struggled in the last couple of weeks to create chances in open play. We were getting plenty in this game. We moved to a 4-2-3-1, which allowed, changed it from us having the width was just wing backs. So I don't know if there's maybe from like a 3-5-2 kind of way, there's a bit of like, obviously the hard work that you're having to do to go back and forth. In this instance, we had, players who were kind of like very high up, meaning that the 4 defenders of Inverness had to essentially, one of them had to pick up Ashley Elizabeth. And then also like the fullbacks were having to be very, very wary of the wide threats in Beth Mackay and Sharon Hughes-Lee. And Sharon in particular was getting well behind the Inverness left back. Jess Murphy was picking her out with all these passes that I'm not too sure how she was managing to do that. I don't know where she's developed that ability from all of a sudden, but kept on finding her in the back into the final third. And Sharon, good couple of crosses, some into the box. I think a couple ended up to Beth Mackay, who probably be quite disappointed that she never ended up getting on the score. But yeah, there was a constant threat there, and I think that kind of pinned Inverness back a little bit. I think that Inverness were also trying to play a wee bit of a high line, which was a bit foolish in a way. I think rather than playing like a high line, they were just sort of, the ball was going over the top and they were just shouting for it anyway, even if, Sharon had given them like a 5-yard like head start. It was just a hopeful thing rather than like an actual tactical thing. But it worked tremendously for us as well. Deliveries coming into the box and that could have been a lot more in the first half. But for me, that was just the clear change there, and the clear benefit was just we're creating actual chances in open play. Funny that though is that the first goal that we scored is we win the ball from range and you end up having like a pot shot, and Gemma Mason from that kind of distance seems to just know where the corner is. So that was a good one to give us the 1-0 lead. Same as well for the second goal. I think we played the ball quite nicely. I think Raywin plays it into Ashley, who's about maybe like 35 yards out, and I think Raywin's making the run into like the final third, and I think Brogan and Beth are also there, and I seen Ashley just winding up the shot, and I was like, no, why are you shooting? don't you like? There's so many people open. If you don't score, and then it went in, and I was just like, but fair enough. It's one of those ones though that didn't score, and I was playing it, I would be so fuming at. Luckily, so Ashley knew exactly what she was doing. Never listened to me as well. But an absolute cracker of a goal. And I think that helped breed a little bit of confidence. They continued to kind of do those right things. Of it was quite direct in that way, but it was purposeful. There was runs that were happening. It wasn't just let's just hope that this makes its way to somebody. Inverness would score a cracker of their own as well for the first half. 3 absolutely incredible goals. So, but yeah, I was only able to see the first half, but very, very much more encouraging signs from the team, and I think that shape just suited them a whole lot better. I don't know if that's maybe something that could maybe continue on from there. I don't know if the personnel kind of maybe leads to a 3-5 kind of 2 kind of thing, but I think the 4-2-3-1 just looks so much more comfortable, and it helps bring out the best and actually creating in play chances as well.
Yeah, certainly from what I saw, the highlights, the 3 goals in the first half, including the Inverness one as well, were absolute crackers. Again, looking at the highlights that I did see from the game, Ashley Elizabeth taking her second goal really well, rounding the keeper and showing a lot of composure in that situation. And, certainly listening to and reading the match report of the game, it was a wee bit nervy at 3-2 when Inverness managed to pull another one back. But Jen Dodds has come off the bench and wrapped it up with a penalty to make it 4-2. And, there's a lot of positives, as you say, to take from that. I think, I spoke to you on Tuesday night and was saying, Ashley Elizabeth's not been on the score sheet for a wee while, and so it was very good to see her getting back in amongst the goals, a couple of very good goals at that. So, as you say, there's a lot of positives to take from that game, and they teed themselves up nicely. They bounced back really well after the Dryburgh result and set themselves up, as I say, for a trip to Greenock Morton, who I'm sure they'll want to right a few wrongs from the last game against them where they dropped points at home.
Yeah, absolutely. Big game. And it'll just be interesting to see, how they kind of cope against that. Morton gave them a really, really tough time last time out. And then obviously, the change in shape there gives us a lot to kind of think about. Do we continue with that, or do we revert back to something that's arguably not been kind of working for the last little while? But, it's quite a crucial run-in for the final end of the season there. You're probably looking at games against Morton in that where the ones that you can't really afford to lose any points, or you're going to risk kind of making it a wee bit uncomfortable. But we know what the team's capable of. Hopefully, you can go there 3 points and you can continue the good form that they've been on this season.
And well done, ladies, for giving us something positive to talk about on this podcast, because the last couple of weeks have been brutal.
You're not wrong. The Lions are back at home and in front of a bumper crowd as they take on St Johnstone in a must-win game in the race for the top 6. Euan, St Johnstone's a funny one, isn't it? I think the home games against them are usually quite crap. We've had some good success,
Don't sugarcoat it, Angus.
There's no way. There's no other way of talking about it, in all honesty. The best kind of the more memorable games for us, I would say, have been away from home. Obviously, we won 4-2 there earlier this season. Last season there was a 3-0 one. The season before that there was the one that Robinson, came off the bench and scored the winner for. Home hasn't quite been the same. And can you see a similar kind of fixture as to what we've seen every other time in recent years against them at home?
Yeah, well, last time we built up the game at McDermott Park back in January, we built it up as going to be a really turgid affair. It had 1 goal written all over it, and then we saw 6 goals and some cracking goals at that in the game. So let's build this one up as being crap, and we can give the big bumper crowd a bit more entertainment, hopefully. But no, it's going to be a tough game, albeit I think St Johnstone are in a bit. I don't know how happy their fans are at this moment in time. I think there's a great deal of frustration with Callum Davidson at this moment in time. Certainly with guys I know who are St Johnstone supporters, in particular their performances at McDermott Park. They've got the worst home record in the league this season. But on the flip side of that, they've got the 4th best away record in the league, which doesn't bode well for us this weekend, does it? 6 wins on the road, 2 draws, 8 defeats this season so far. But yeah, they're kind of slumping form since the World Cup break's been quite alarming. 3 wins in 15 since the World Cup break, and that resulted in Callum Davidson talking about them being in a relegation scrap all of a sudden. And I think they've almost gone a bit under the radar in terms of how they've slipped down the league, and teams have clawed them back into the scrap at the bottom, because the gap between 11th place now and them is only 5 points. And given the fact that they need to play off against each other in the post-split fixtures, St Johnstone could be in a little bit of trouble. But yeah, I still think it's going to be a difficult game. I don't think St Johnstone are as difficult to break down as they have been in previous seasons. I was having a little kind of comparison with them compared to last year when I was looking at our stats as well. And, compared to last year, they've scored 33 so far this season compared to 24 the entirety of the campaign last year. And they've conceded a lot more goals as well at this point. 51 conceded. So, yeah, they're conceding a lot more, but they have proved to be probably a little bit more of a threat going forward this season. I think you can almost predict what St Johnstone will set up like. They've been religiously playing a 3-5-2, a 5-3-2 under Callum Davidson since he came into the job, and you can kind of predict what to expect from the game. It'll be pretty tight. I don't know if we'll try and almost sucker St Johnstone in a little bit to try and...
I think that's an interesting thing maybe to talk about, is how, obviously, we've kind of talked about it in the past, how Davey likes to match up a 5 at the back with a 5 at the back. How bad our 5 at the back's been recently? Do we go again?
No, I think listening to Davey's comments, and that isn't me trying to be funny, but listening to Davey's comments after the game at the weekend there against Motherwell, I think that'll be an end to the 3-5-2 experiment for the time being. And I do believe he'll try and go back to the basics of what we've been doing the vast majority of the last 2 seasons. So I can see us going back to that 4-3-3 for this game. And we have had success against St Johnstone this season. We've got 6 points from 6 against them, beat them 1-0 at home, obviously went up there and won 4-2. And in both games, I would say we were very comfortable for large spells of the game. So we shouldn't go into the game concerned, albeit it's natural to do that given our recent run of form. And it's as we say, it's a massive game. Before the game, we could know if we could leapfrog Hibs, depending on their result in the Edinburgh Derby as well. So I'm sure there'll be fans kind of tuning into that to see how that goes, to kind of give us a better idea of what we're needing in our last couple of games. But, they've got an extra potential 4,000, just over 4,000 fans coming to the game. And I know our previous record in these games where we've given away the tickets, I don't think we've won one of them since we started doing it the last couple of seasons. I think it's all draws and then the Ross County defeat. So hopefully they can give these fans something to go back home with in terms of 3 points, and hopefully seeing us leapfrog back into the top 6. But yeah, it's a difficult one to predict because St Johnstone are very much a Jekyll and Hyde side when it comes to their home and away form. They've certainly been a bit better on the road this season.
It's a funny thing with the fans there as well that you mentioned with the free tickets coming out. Are any of them going to come after the last couple of weeks? And can you blame them? But yeah, we're just going to have to see what that happens. And yeah, everybody will have that same thought in mind. And have we ever won any of these games where the extra tickets have been given out? In St Johnstone as well, it's just a team you just know can pull out a result against us. I just don't know what to expect. I don't know what to do anymore, Euan. What? Last time you were way off the mark with it. I guess what we'll may as well just talk about is what kind of personnel would you like to see for this game here? Obviously, we alluded to a little bit of shape there. I think we both prefer to see, the kind of the 4-3-3 in there. Obviously, earlier in the show, we were talking about Bruce Anderson. Who drops out of the forward line for that? Who do we play on, the right hand side? Because Newbley will probably be on, one of the flanks. Midfield, there's a couple of options. There's somebody who, you're probably happy to see back on the subs bench at the weekend there at least as well. Centre back pairing. A lot to ponder. Is this probably one of the first times in quite a while that we're really, really pondering, who should be in the 11, and maybe for more kind of negative reasons as opposed to, competition for places?
Yeah, well, Davey always talks about there's a way in and out the team, doesn't he? And certainly the performances in the last couple of weeks, there's definitely a way out the team at this moment in time. I know he made a few changes for the game at the weekend, but it obviously didn't have the desired impact that he would have been hoping for. But yeah, I can see us going back, as I say, to our standard kind of 4-3-3, which we've played vast majority of the last couple of seasons in terms of the personnel who fit into that. I'd like to see Morgan Boyes coming back in. He dropped to the bench at the weekend, so I'd like to see Morgan back in the side. Interesting to see what happens at left back, given Christian Montano wasn't in the squad at the weekend. Whether he's available, I would like to see Christian back in the side as well. I think he gives us a really good outball on that left-hand side. And the midfield three, it's a bit of a toss-up, isn't it? You could put any combination of our midfield three and not be disappointed with it. If you look back at the game in January, we almost played a 4-2-3-1 in that game, and it was Sean Kelly and Omiyonga sat, Shinnie playing almost as a number 10, and we were quite effective in that game, playing in that particular kind of shape. Whether Davey looks to try and replicate that, I don't know. But yeah, certainly I'd like to see Bruce Anderson back in the side as a kind of out-and-out number 9, and personal opinion, our best front three this season has been when it's been Newbley, Anderson and Bradley. When we've managed to get all three of them on the park at the same time, I think they've caused a lot of problems. And certainly in the game up at McDermott Park, Stephen Bradley had an excellent game that afternoon as well on the right-hand side. I think played a big part in a couple of the goals as well. So yeah, there's certainly food for thought for Davey in terms of the personnel that comes in for the game. What about yourself? What would you like to see?
I don't know, man. Yeah, I think we've kind of alluded to there, like, we may as well go more attacking because defensive efforts haven't been playing away. I would at least prefer to see us kind of go for it a little bit, and then if we get kind of caught out that way, then, you know, fair enough, we can hold our hands up in that way. But Anderson's got to come in for me, otherwise that is a very, very concerning thing, I would say. Yeah, Bradley as well. Would like to see a wee bit more of a kind of extended run in the team for him. If Montano's available, then yeah, for sure. Overall, just needs to see just a lot more better performance from, regardless of who's involved, in all honesty, because it's not been good enough. If we can not concede in the first 10 minutes of the game this time, if we can not be 3-0 down at half time this time, I mean, I hope that's not too much to ask for, but I'm sure the players will be looking to make things right after this, and maybe there'll be wholesale changes because of that, but I don't really know if we're in a position to be kind of doing that with the kind of form we've been in. And if so, then there are a lot of people who are going to have to be coming in and, you know, being at it, because, you know, St Johnstone can be that team who can have that extra wee bit of dig and a wee bit of fight in them in one day. And if we're not careful against that, could get turned over again. But let's hope for something much better crowd coming to, hopefully coming to the game on Saturday as well. Hopefully can show them a little glimpse of what the club's really about, and, you know, we can hopefully get one of our first wins with under this kind of scheme. I'm looking forward to this game because I am getting a free pie for the GS's efforts in Watford a few months ago. So that, for me, I hope that isn't the highlight of the game.
I kind of hope so too. To be honest with you. Yeah, I did see that on Twitter beforehand, so congratulations on your free pie, Angus. I hope you don't choke on it. But let's go on to predictions then, Angus. We both decided to go down the pessimistic route last week, which got us points, albeit I didn't want the points, but it got us points. How are you going this week? Can we bounce back?
The curse continues, Euan. I'm going 1-1.
Oh.
See what's happened. See what we've done to Euan. Euan is humming and hawing over these predictions now.
Livingston FC, you've broken my positivity. You've broken my positivity when it comes to predictions. I'm gonna be positive for my sins. I'm gonna go 3-1 Livy. Go 3-1 Livy. I think we're gonna
3-1.
Yeah. I'm gonna go 3-1. I'm just gonna be.
You're gonna do a wee reversal here, and we're gonna be 3-0 up at half time.
Yeah, yeah. Aye, bugger it. Why not? And then we'll sit in, camp in, concede a goal in the first 5 minutes of the second half. Pretty much a carbon copy of the Kilmarnock game. Yeah. We'll go with that. And do you want to know? I beg you, Livingston FC, for that. I beg you for it. No,
honestly, I would take right now us to be pretty dire and like Liam Gordon misplacing a back pass to the keeper, and that's how we win 1-0 at this moment.
Yeah, I'd take anything for the 3 points. And as I say, given the fact that the Edinburgh Derby kicks off beforehand and we'll know the result of that, would give us, I'm sure the players will be aware of what the score will be going into the game. So it gives them possibly that added incentive where they could leapfrog back into the top 6 if results go in our favour. So here's hoping the bumper crowd gets a startling performance from the Lions of West Lothian. That's it for this week's episode of Talk Livi. Thanks again to every single one of you for once again listening to our negativity over the last couple of weeks. As I say, for tuning in, week out as you always do. If you can, we'd love to hear your feedback. Either leave us a review on iTunes or simply message us on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram.
As Euan said, we're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, so search Talk Livi to find us and you'll find all the links to our weekly episodes on there as well. You can also find all our episodes, including this one, on all good podcast streaming sites, including iTunes and Spotify. We're also on YouTube, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If none of those options suit you, all you have to do is head to our website, talklivipodcast.libsyn.com, where you'll find every single episode we've done over the last few years.
That's it for this week, and thanks to all our listeners for tuning in, as always. And let's hope for a much, much better week following the Lothians' finest football team.
West Lothian is our battle cry. This is the place from which we hail. Livingston, oh Livingston, it's up to Amberville. Livingston, 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 oh Livingston, oh Livingston, we love it when you score. Livingston, oh Livingston, the Amberville Lions roar. Livingston, oh Livingston, we realize our vision. Livingston, oh Livingston, into the Premier League.